And the first thing she asked me was, "Haben Sie schon eine Hebamme gefunden?" To which I replied, "Sollte ich das tun?" Hi guys, welcome back to our channel. If you're new here, my name's Ashton and I'm 1/3 of the Black Forest family. You know, as I'm sure many parents know, it seems like whenever you walk into your kid's room, it looks like a mini tornado hit it. But I feel like now that Jack is about to turn 1 in just a couple of weeks, it seems like he is into absolutely everything, which, don't get me wrong, is a lot of work, but it's such a fun milestone to watch him grow and learn and explore more of his surroundings. And you know, actually, because we're approaching Jack's birthday, it really has me thinking back a lot about where I was just 1 year ago, when Jonathan and I were waiting for our little man to make his entrance into the world. But you know, honestly, during that time, there was so much that I had to learn. I was about to give birth in a foreign country, and on top of becoming a new mom, it honestly felt a little bit overwhelming. But one of the absolute best resources I had during that time was my midwife. And surprisingly, a German midwife, or a Hebamme, is actually very different than an American midwife. So whether you're somebody who is new to pregnancy, expecting a little one, or just somebody who's interested in the differences between German and American life, I actually think you're gonna find this video pretty interesting. So let's dive deep into what exactly is a German midwife and what do they do. So speaking from personal experience, I will never forget the day where I went into my 12-week appointment with my Frauenarzt, and the first thing she asked me was, "Haben Sie schon eine Hebamme gefunden?" To which I replied, "Sollte ich das tun?" Because honestly, finding a midwife was something that I had no idea I was supposed to do in preparation for giving birth in Germany. You see, in the United States, while you can certainly seek out a midwife, only about 8% of US women have births that are even attended by a midwife. From what I knew about them from my American perspective is that they were really just somebody who was there to help with home births. But you see, in Germany, it's the exact opposite. Midwives are an essential part of the birthing process, and in fact, in Germany, a midwife is legally required to attend a birth, whereas a doctor is not. And I think that's actually pretty interesting because it speaks to a larger attitude about pregnancy and childbirth in general in German culture. In the United States, births are considered an emergency event, which is why the vast majority of women give birth in a hospital. But in Germany, it's just a normal medical process. Because you see, at its core, the midwifery model of care, which is actually the model that German prenatal care is based on, is really just the same as any other medical or physiological event. It's not really seen as an emergency. I actually read a really interesting article recently that was saying that the role of doctors historically in Germany was really only reserved for high-risk pregnancies or emergencies during the birthing process. Now granted, a lot of that's changed and many women give birth in a hospital under the supervision of a doctor. But even while you're in a hospital, midwives are still an essential part of the birthing process. In fact, when I was giving birth to Jack at the university hospital, during the labor process, it was primarily the midwives who were coming in to check on me, offering me things like alternative pain management, aromatherapy, soft lights and candles, and music playing to help relax me during the childbirth process. And it's because of this central role that I think it's really important for international women to understand the role of a midwife, not only because they're a central part of the birthing process, but because they offer so much more in supporting you throughout your pregnancy and can be essential in the postpartum time where you might not actually have family nearby to help you, which was the case with us. So I'm sure at this point in the video, you probably have a lot of questions about what a midwife even does in Germany. Obviously, they are an integral part to the process, so let's take a look at some of the various roles that they can offer you for support during your pregnancy. So as I alluded to at the beginning of this video, the first thing you're gonna wanna do if you find yourself pregnant in Germany is find a midwife. I can't stress this enough. I didn't start looking until I was 12 weeks pregnant, and I was very late to the game, at least here in my city of Freiburg. Now, getting in touch with a Hebamme early is super important because they actually can provide prenatal appointments and care for you. I actually ended up having a high-risk pregnancy, so the majority of my prenatal appointments happened through my OBGYN or my Frauenarzt. However, many women in Germany and some of my friends actually opted to have some of their checkups through their Hebamme, choosing only to go into the Frauenarzt when they needed to have blood work done or an anatomy scan on their baby. Generally speaking, midwives can do many of the same things that OBGYNs can, except for ultrasounds. And because midwives can actually do some of these prenatal appointments in your home, it can be in a lot less stressful and comfortable environment. Because I actually gave birth during the coronavirus pandemic, Jonathan was only able to come to the 20-week anatomy scan. All of the other appointments, I had to go it alone. But my friends who opted to have some of their appointments through their midwife got to have their significant others be a lot more involved in that prenatal process. Now, the second thing that midwives can offer you in Germany are birthing courses and education. Some of these classes are mother-centric, like prenatal fitness classes, postpartum rebuilding or Rückbildungskurs, and general childbirth education. But others can be baby-centric, like teaching the mom and dad how to best care for their new one before or after they're born. Now, these type of courses may be offered independently through midwives, but many times they actually happen at the hospital, where a midwife will conduct a birth preparation course, for example, that many mothers who are expecting around the same time can sign up for and attend. Again, I didn't actually have a whole lot of experience with this because, well, the pandemic and corona meant that they were canceled altogether, but having these kind of classes that can help both the mother and the father prepare for childbirth are also very common in the States and can be super helpful for educating the both on you on what to expect during birth and how to manage pain better. Now, the next essential service that a midwife performs in Germany is what I alluded to earlier. They actually attend the birth. Whether you give birth in a hospital, a birthing center, or at home, legally, midwives are required to be a part of the process. Now here, I actually thought it would be helpful for me to give a little bit of context because although you should definitely choose your midwife fairly early on in your pregnancy, and while your midwife may actually be extremely competent and certified to help attend births, depending on the setting that you choose, it actually may be a different midwife who attends your birth. Let me explain. As I mentioned before, I gave birth at the university hospital. I specifically chose my midwife because she worked through the university hospital, and to me, that made a ton of sense. The thing is, at the university clinic, midwives actually work on a rotation, a lot like doctors or nurses. So if my midwife wasn't working at the time I went into labor, which is what happened to me, I actually ended up having a midwife who I had never met before, who was there helping me through the birthing process. And because my labor went on for forever, I actually had multiple midwives that changed out over shifts to help me along. Now, for me, having people come in and out doesn't necessarily bother me. However, if you are somebody who wants your specific midwife to attend your birth, you may want to look into somebody who's termed an independent midwife or a Beleghebamme, as these are midwives who often have privileges at a specific hospital but don't necessarily work for that specific hospital. And individual hospitals will have completely different policies on which midwives they allow to come in and out. And you might find that you have more flexibility at a birthing center and of course giving birth at home. So these are all important conversations to have with your hospital of choice, specifically during your registration with the hospital, which should happen about week 34 of your pregnancy. And last but not least, midwives are very important in Germany because they actually provide postpartum care. Now, I personally haven't given birth in the United States, but I've spoken in a couple of past videos about how short the recovery time is in American hospitals. Typically you stay there just for 24 hours or maybe 2 to 3 days after having a C-section, and then you go home. The only other time in the States that you actually receive postpartum care is when you have your checkup at the Frauenarzt. But in Germany, things are a lot different. The midwife is actually your personal contact to help you through the postpartum period, and they're actually your primary contact during this period of time. My Hebamme was completely paid for by our public health insurance, and she was available to us in the 8 weeks immediately after giving birth. She would come every day if necessary, but generally after the first week or so, she only would come every few days or once a week, depending on our needs as a family. But what she provided for us was so essential. As I'm sure any international family knows, giving birth in a foreign country isn't just scary because of its location. It's often very stressful because your family members are so far away and you can't necessarily rely on them for the advice and care like you would back in your home country. So our midwife was wonderful because she not only came and checked up on me, my C-section scar, she would look to see how I was recovering, if I had any post-op complications such as bleeding, but she would also come to check on Jack and answer any questions that we had about his development, how to best take care of him, or if something was going on that made us nervous. Because let's be honest, I don't think it was just me. I think all new parents have a lot of nervousness when it comes to this brand new baby who has just entered your family. However, before I let you go, I do want to mention again that many cities right now are actually experiencing a midwife shortage, which makes it more important than ever that if you find yourself pregnant in Germany, that you start reaching out to find a midwife that will work for you very early on in your pregnancy. As I mentioned, I waited until week 12 and I was very late to the game. Okay, so as you can see, midwives are not only an essential part of the healthcare system in Germany, but they can be a wonderful resource for new parents to be. Now, if you have specific questions about pregnancy or healthcare in Germany, we've actually made a couple of different videos, and I'll put the links up here that you're more than welcome to check out. In addition, we've actually also written a couple of blog posts about pregnancy in Germany, broken down by each trimester, and I'll also put those links down below in the description. Now, before I let you go, I would love to hear from you down in the comment section about what your experience was like with a midwife, whether you're here in Germany or somewhere abroad. Each birth is an individual experience, and I would love to read your stories about how pregnancy and childbirth was helped along by a midwife or a physician in your own birth story. Okay, so that wraps up this video talking about the role of midwives in Germany and how they can be an essential part of your prenatal, birth, or postpartum experience. If you enjoyed today's video, make sure to hit that thumbs up button. And for more content from the Black Forest family, hit that subscribe button. So, until next time, cheers!